It's a disgrace the way it is.
I agree. You know what's not a disgrace?
What's that?
GSU football, baby.
Oh yeah, Sun
We're,
Belt represent.
we see. You know what? I had this vision when Georgia State first started football.
You had a vision.
I had a vision. I would create Georgia State University on my NCAA football games, and we will go to the NCAA tournament. I mean, NCAA Division One. There's a couple of things I want to make with this, and I want to include basketball in this discussion. I think that for the basketball team, it is better because they have better chance to get into the NCAA tournament because the CAA is a much harder conference than the Sun Belt for basketball. For football, I have absolutely no clue. With the exception of some of the schools that Joe, you have a list of the schools, right?
Yeah, we should pause. For those of you that don't listen to the podcast, both Eric, I work at Georgia State University. Eric is a graduate of Georgia State University.
I am the alumnus.
He is the alumnus. We actually heard it here first on the MissedOnPoints interview.
Did you not?
On the MissedOnPoints interview, Eric interviewed Ben Moore, who works for Panther Talk. Shout out to Ben, who was absolutely right about this, and weeks ago said that he thought we would be moving to the Sun Belt and that it would happen this year. It did. The Sun Belt is currently composed of the following schools: Arkansas State, I have no idea.
I've heard of them.
Arkansas Little Rock, no idea.
I think it's the capital.
Inexplicably, Denver is in the Sun Belt. I mean, I've been to Denver and the sun shone, but then there was a blizzard for I don't know how that makes sense. Florida Atlantic.
That was sounding me scratching my head.
Right. Florida Atlantic, Florida International, Louisiana Lafayette, Louisiana Monroe, Middle Tennessee, North Texas, South Alabama, Troy, and Western Kentucky.
Okay. Western Kentucky is normally good at basketball. North Texas, who we got to see their football facilities as we drove to Oklahoma, Joe. They're normally pretty good at football, as is Troy. Troy produced DeMarcus Ware, for example. I think Tracy Porter. So normally they have pretty good football programs. I really don't understand why Denver's in the Sun Belt.
All the rest of those schools are in the general Southeast. I mean, I
Sure.
suppose that Arkansas and North Texas, but there is a if you said Sun Belt as a metaphor, you could sort of imagine a belt going across the geography of the South United States that would take all of those schools in, except for Denver.
Not really sure why they're there. Can't quite figure that out.
Yeah, I don't know. But when you say that list of schools to me, what I think of is the Jeopardy category must be, what are a bunch of schools that Georgia State University ought to be able to beat in football? Now, admittedly, that is probably also the Jeopardy category of the conference that we were in last year where we performed terribly. But now that we're...
Conference last year.
Yeah.
Last year we were still an independent.
Yeah.
And a CAA conference this year.
Yeah, this year, I mean the year that was just completed. And we played very poorly. We played very poorly this year, and we played poorly against a list of schools that were even less impressive than the list of schools that are in the Sun Belt. But if we're going to be a serious football team, if we are going to really compete in the FBS, this seems like a conference from which we could, definitely launch ourselves. It's going to take some years. We've got to start recruiting different kinds of players. It's only appropriate that we recruit different kinds of players because of the nature of the conference that we will be in and the fact that we'll be in the FBS. But that you could start a lot of worse places.
No, the beauty of this is that you get to walk into a kid's living room now and say, you have a chance to play in a bowl game. You have a chance to complete in the NCAA. You have a chance now and this should, again, me and Ben Moore, kind of maybe disagree with this a little bit, but if you're playing Division I football, if you're playing whatever the top tier NCAA is called, and you are considering being on the bench at Georgia Tech or going to Georgia Southern, Georgia State's positioned now to take those kids and say, listen, you can play right away, you can play for a bowl game, you could play for several bowl games, especially if there's like 90 bowl games now. If you finish with a winning record, you're going to a bowl game somewhere. So this is great for GSU, both GSU football and for GSU basketball. I don't know about the women's side. I remember Louisiana Tech used to be a dominant basketball team. I don't know how that's changed. But we got to get Ben on the show to kind of pick his brain and see what he thinks. But I think this is a fantastic move. And my prediction, you heard it here first. My prediction: Georgia State plays in a bowl game within 4 years.
I don't think that's an unrealistic prediction at all. It ought to, we said this when they started the football program. We said you ought to be able to recruit people to Georgia State, bring them on campus. It's in Atlanta. It's not necessarily in the most beautiful part of Atlanta, but it's in Atlanta. It's a thriving community. It is one of the most diverse schools in every way, racially diverse, age group diversity, international diversity. Beautiful women. Honestly, and the campus is growing, and we are becoming a more traditional university. You ought to be able to recruit, and at least until the Falcons figure out a different stadium situation, we're playing in the Georgia Dome, so they ought to be able to recruit.
You're going to be on TV. You're going to be on one of those ESPN channels because the Sun Belt has played on there quite a bit. You're going to get seen. The argument before was, well, you don't play on TV. Well, that's been eliminated. Imagine if you're a freshman coming in, you've got a chance to maybe leave at your third or fourth year and then playing in about 3 or 4 bowl games now, where pro scouts are going to see you.
Yep.
So this can only be a benefit to Georgia State. I think this year, I'm not sure how the team will do. We still lack some size, but clearly that should be remedied in the next recruiting class, especially now because we're going to have some guys that are going to be, looked at for pro scouts and things of that nature.
And look, we're going to go after some interviews with some people that are associated with the program to try to really talk about Georgia State football in a way that, frankly, no one else who's in the major Atlanta media. There's a bunch of places like Panther Talk that do a good job of covering us.
Yeah, Panther Talk is awesome at that.
But the major Atlanta media kind of ignores us. We're going to go after some interviews with some of the Georgia State folks to really get some answers to questions we have. But let me just say this, as someone that works at Georgia State. The first year we had a football team was the only time in the history of the university that I have been there, since 1999, that I saw school spirit. And I think football has the potential to bring the campus together and create a sense of community at Georgia State, which we currently don't have, and the potential to really help the university become the kind of place it wants to be. Dear Georgia State, please don't screw this up, because you could. They could. Instead of being UCF or USF, one of those stories of brand new football teams or relatively new football teams that make it big quickly, we could become one of those stories of a school that gets a team, goes big quickly, and then fails. I want us to succeed. Please don't screw this up.
No, the key is probably keeping Curry around because he has name recognition.
Is it? That's a question I'd love to. I think you're right in terms of keeping Curry around generally. I got the sense when he was hired that he was gonna be around to shepherd the program into the FBS, and then you might see him take over as athletic director and have somebody else coach the team. I could be totally wrong about that.
No, you could be totally right about that, but I think having Curry around in some capacity is important. He's an NFL Hall of Famer, if I'm not mistaken. So having him around will be important.
Yeah, and I think we learned basketball, we sort of learned our lesson with Lefty. It helped to have a big name, even if his name was not untarnished.